Well, hello and welcome to this weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Greek, and we're going to be in 2 Corinthians 13, verses 11 to 12. You'll notice underneath here I have Young's literal translation, which you may find this sometimes in various Bible software programs as YLT. Students, especially beginning students, sometimes want to compare their translations with the most literal. Can you give me super literal English translation? And you can't get more super literal than Young's. And if you Google that, I'm sure you can find an online free version of it. Doesn't mean it's the best translation, but it is the most literalistic translation. And sometimes beginning students find that helpful when checking themselves on translating some basic forms in very wooden ways. But what I'd like to focus on here is in 2 Corinthians 13, verse 11 and 12, we have some present imperatives, right? With present imperative, present imperative, present imperative, present imperative, present imperative. And then in verse 12, we switch to an aorist imperative, right? Here translated in Young's literal translation. Again, it's about 100 years old, so it's kind of antiquated somewhat, but salute, right? Greet one another. You notice how I even translate the preposition in as in. I mean, it's really literal. But greet one another with a holy kiss, or salute one another with a holy kiss. And so why does Paul change from all these present imperatives to an aorist? Well, I'm really glad for Don Garlington's forthcoming, or at this point, when you're watching this, it may be out, Don Garlington's Egg in Tea. I love this series, The Exegetical Guide to the Greek New Testament. And Don Garlington did the 2 Corinthians volume. And he says here, rightly, he says, why this change from the present to the aorist? He said, well, in greetings and prayers, the aorist is preferred, or aorist is common in Koine. So that's great because it shows us how a knowledge of Greek protects us and keeps us from over-interpreting certain passages, right? Someone could try to make a whole lot of that, but the reality is that is the expected form in a greeting for this verb to occur as an aorist imperative. So if it were not aorist imperative, that's what would surprise us. Just like when you have prayers, the aorist imperative is the default tense idiomatically, and so it's when it's not aorist that it surprises us. And so again, that's one reason we study Greek, is to protect us and keep us from over-interpreting as we nuance out our understanding of certain forms and patterns in Greek. Let me make one other small note as we're working on this text. We see how in Hagio Philemati is translated in a holy kiss, right? It's over a literal translation. We're reminded, just to clarify, that the prepositional phrase here within can communicate spatial ideas, right? In, like here's a bucket, in a bucket, the spatial or locative idea. But that prepositional phrase within also many times communicates means or instrument. It very frequently is translated with the word by or with a holy kiss. And so that's a very common usage. And so to put that in more understandable English, I think most modern English translations would favor with a holy kiss. Greet one another with a holy kiss.